I don't even know what she said, cause she it's form, and she got it done, like the way she forms, and she got it form.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Blue Nation Insider Podcast on the All Sports Focus Network. I'm back here today with my co-host, Ryan. Ryan, say what's up.
What's up, everybody?
So today we're going to be talking a little Final Four kind of preview of the games on Saturday, talking about some of the Elite Eight games from this last weekend. And then in the second half of the episode, going to be focusing on Kentucky as the offseason starts in a week from basically, I would say, about today, because the transfer portal opens up the day after the national championship. So, I mean, I'm excited. This is the best time of the year for us teams that are no longer in the tournament because we're like, all right, kind of a crappy year. We get to move on. We're looking forward to this next year, and that's what we're focusing on now. So, but first things first, we're going to focus on these two Final Four games, starting off with Illinois and UConn. Two teams who, weren't really the highly favorited teams coming out of their respective kind of regions, but they made it here. And shout out Illinois. I mean, they kind of ran through everybody. They had a little bit close there with Iowa during that Elite Eight game, but other than that, I mean, they blew out VCU, they blew out Penn, they blew out Houston, and so I mean, shout out to them. And then UConn. I mean, let's talk about that UConn Duke game. I mean, that was incredible. That was one of the March Madness games of the year, of the last couple years, honestly. 19-point comeback into that final shot. I mean, I don't know if you were able to watch the game, Ryan, but what were your kind of thoughts from that game, that Elite Eight game?
Yeah, I mean, it brought up for me a lot of questions about Duke that they said this is, I think, their third double digit lead that they've blown to lose in the Elite Eight or Final Four. And with the number of number one draft picks and top 10 draft picks and stuff that they've had, it definitely brings up some questions of, okay, we talk about the North Carolina and the Kansas and the Kentucky's not being able to get it done, but Duke has kind of avoided its fair share of criticism because they've had these talented teams, but they haven't won a title since 2015. So it definitely brought up a couple question marks for me in that aspect. And I just think they lost that game. They completely went away from what was working in the first half. UConn turned up the pressure, and Duke, to be completely honest, just showed their youth and showed how sometimes it's nice to have some guys that have been in the tournament and have played a couple games over a couple years, because that inexperience, you had a freshman kind of guard slash forward was the one that threw that ball away to give up the three.
Yeah. I mean, that really raises the question of everything, of the whole transfer portal versus freshmen, all those questions. But, I mean, it's also a shout out to UConn. I mean, they had a great second half. They looked like crap in the first
Yeah.
half, but a fantastic game plan coming out of halftime. Dan Hurley is just a psychopath. I mean, he's headbutting referees. I don't know what happened there. We're not going to get into it, but more focusing on the Final Four game now between UConn and Illinois. I think this should be a great matchup. I really do. This is two teams who really can, when they get in half-court sets, their offensive sets are some of the best in the nation. I mean, UConn sets that they run for Caravan and Mullins and getting Reed, their big man, open, I mean, they're lethal. And then Illinois getting some of their shooters open. Keaton Wagler, I mean, he's a stud. He's going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. So, I mean, this should be a very even matchup. I mean, it's tough for me. I didn't have either of these teams in the Final Four. I had Houston and Duke, but here we are. So, Ryan, you got any thoughts on this Final Four game here before we pick our winners of it?
This is going to be a big defensive battle. I think both teams, Illinois has really kind of shown their defensive prowess in getting them here to this game. And everybody that they've beaten, they've held to well below their season averages on offense. And then UConn obviously showed that they can do it. I mean, all the firepower that Duke had in that Elite Eight game, and to be able to not only turn up the pressure to win the game, but also to come back from down 19 at halftime, I think really shows their defensive ability. So I think this is going to be much more of a defensive battle than maybe the Michigan Arizona game will be.
Okay. All right. So, Ryan, who is your winner of this first Final Four matchup?
I hate to say it, but I think I've got to go with UConn. Dan Hurley has been here. He's got guys that have been here. They won prior to this last year 2 straight national championships. They've been around the Final Fours. They have the experience here, and I think coming down to the end of the stretch, they that is the difference, and they get the win.
Okay. Yeah, for the same reasons, I'm going to pick UConn. I mean, Illinois is a very talented team, but I think it's going to come down to UConn's kind of, their history here. They have Caravan, who was part of those two national championship teams. So I think that's going to get them over the hump and into the national championship. All right, then moving on here to the second matchup between Arizona and Michigan. Kind of on the flip side of these to the other Final Four matchup. These two teams, they were supposed to be here. They were basically everybody was predicting like these are the 2-1 seeds that I feel have the easiest paths and can get to the Final Four. And that's exactly what they did. They basically ran through everybody they played. I mean, Arizona kind of had a little bit of a scare with Utah State. Nothing crazy. They were down to Purdue at one point, but the final scores showed who were the better team in all of those Arizona games. They blew the doors off Arkansas in the Sweet 16. So obviously, us as Kentucky fans, we love to see that. And then Michigan, another thing that us Kentucky fans love to see is still Tennessee with 0 Final Fours because Michigan absolutely blew the doors off them in the Elite Eight. So that's always a good sign. But this Final Four matchup, I think these are the two top dogs. I mean, if you would have told me before this tournament who were like the favorited teams, I would have said it's probably Michigan and Arizona. And it's unfortunate that they have to meet in the Final Four, not the national championship. But Ryan, what are your kind of thoughts here early on this Arizona-Michigan Final Four matchup?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this was kind of who was expected to be here. The 2-1 seeds from the two regions, they showed it all the way through. The firepower on both sides, the star power, I guess I should more so say, on both teams has been evident throughout the whole tournament. Do I believe that Yaxel Lindenberg actually got offered $7 to $9 million to go to Kentucky? Absolutely
No,
not.
Mark Pope already said
But
that was
he's
false. That was like
yeah.
people
But
making up shit.
regardless, I think he has shown why he was kind of the top player coming out of the portal. He has been dominant, and Arizona has been. Tommy Lloyd has this Wildcats team just absolutely turning on all gears and all cylinders, and they're rolling. So this is going to be a real juggernaut matchup. And kind of reverse of what I said for the first game, I think this one ends up being much more of a offensive, kind of high scoring, high octane, very fast paced game throughout the whole 40 minutes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it should be a shootout. I really do. I mean, these are two just teams that have played good defense, like you said, but also throughout the year, they've just been the most kind of dominant offenses as well. I mean, they got Burries, they got Bradley, they have Koa Pete. I mean, those are just the main three. And then Michigan, you've got Yaxel Lindenborg, you've got Mara at the big man, then you've got Cadeau. So hopefully everything's okay with Elliot Cadeau. I just saw Pat text in our group chat about it, but I don't know what happened with that whole situation, but I'm hoping he's all right and
Sounds
good
like
to
it was a
play.
potential allergic reaction, but he's okay.
Okay. So yeah, hopefully everything's fine with that. But I think this should just be a really good game. I think this should just be a classic Final Four matchup just of two of the best teams all season long, and I'm glad this matchup is happening. So should be a really good one. I'll start us off here. I'm picking Arizona. Arizona is my national champion and my bracket picked, and I'm going to stick with that. I think they have been the best team in this tournament so far. And Michigan's been the second best team in my opinion, but I think this comes down to like the last minute, and I think Arizona hits a big three to go up like 6 points with like a minute left, and that kind of ices the game. So I think that's my prediction. Ryan?
Yeah, I also had Arizona winning when we first did our bracket challenge, and I'm going to stick to that too. I do think it even ends up closer than 6 points. I think this ends up as a 82-80 or 84-82 type of game. Very high offense all throughout. And then I think, same as you said, in the final minute, you might see a trade back and forth, and Arizona comes down, hits a jumper inside the arc to gives Michigan a chance to throw a Hail Mary, and it doesn't connect.
All right, so our national championship matchup, me and Ryan both picked Arizona and UConn. And as you can both tell, we were both sticking with Arizona as that was our champions if you watched our episode from 2 weeks ago of a preview of March Madness. So we're sticking with that. Obviously, it's not an exciting pick by any means, but they were the best team coming into this tournament, in my opinion. And I think they finished the tournament as the best team and become. And I think Sean said on the first one, I think it's since like when they won it in like 2002 or whatever year they won it. That's the first team like east of the or west of the Mississippi to win a national championship since they did it. So, I mean, everybody else has been to the
Yeah.
east. I mean, with all the UConn championships and the Floridas and the Kentuckys and the North Carolinas and the Dukes, everybody else has been on that side. So,
Louisville's vacated national championship.
yeah, the Louisville vacated one. So, yeah, with that being said, that is going to wrap up this first half of the episode. Ryan, you got anything left here on our little Final Four preview?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's been a great tournament. Obviously, there's been some crazy games. We have not gotten a chance to talk about the Kentucky Santa Clara game, but we will talk about that after the break. That was an insane game. There's a couple other ones. High Point, Wisconsin was a great game. Shot of that one out in the first round. My pick, TCU Ohio State, was a banger of a first game. I mean, there was a lot of good games. There's some really good games. There was also some really bad blowout games, especially in the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16. So, but hoping for these Final Four games and national championships to be good games for these last 3 games of the year to watch and enjoy. So, with that being said, we're going to hop into the break and we'll see you guys after the break. Let's be honest, most golf clothing hasn't changed in decades. It's stiff, boxy, and built for clubhouse dress codes, but not for real life. That's why we created Focus Golf.
Focus Golf is a modern golf clothing line designed for performance, comfort, and style, on the course and everywhere else. It's lightweight, breathable fabrics, an athletic fit, clean and versatile designs that move with you, not against you. This is gear you can play 18 holes in, hit the range, and still wear straight to dinner without thinking twice.
There's no loud patterns, no outdated styles, just sharp golf apparel built for how the game is actually played today. So if you're done choosing between comfort and style, it's time to upgrade.
Check out Focus Golf at the All Sports Focus Network website and use code FG10 for 10% off your first order.
Focus Golf, built for golf, worn everywhere. Welcome back from the break. As that commercial just said, go check out the brand new website at allsportsfocus.com, allsportsfocusnetwork.com, excuse me. We've got all of our golf stuff on there. We've got the hat, we've got the polos, we've got our blog posts. Everything is up on that website, so make sure to go check that out. Sign up for the newsletter and the emails, and you'll get 10% off your first Focus Golf order. And be on the lookout. If you're listening to this episode, you're getting a little teaser here. We will be debuting some new hats next week with our Masters, our first ever Focus Golf Masters podcast. So those will be releasing at the same time as that podcast, so be on the lookout for those. With that being said here, moving on to the BBN Insider part of this episode, focusing on Kentucky basketball, wrapping up the season and looking onto the transfer portal here. Obviously, Kentucky got an insane win over Santa Clara in the first round. Otega Owe with a massive shot and then a bunch of big plays in overtime. But then that was kind of outweighed with the blowout loss to Iowa State in the second round where they came out the gates firing and it was like, holy crap, we might be able to do this. And then they hit their normal mark at about 8 minutes left in the first half and they blew the lead and they were down 1 at halftime and never got that close again. So that was basically the story of Kentucky's season when they were playing, better opponents, especially a team like Florida, like Iowa State, who, put a ton of pressure on the ball and they struggled. And that really showed from only having one point guard. And so moving in here to the offseason part of it.
Really a point guard.
Who wasn't even a point guard. Moving into the offseason part of it here, Kentucky finally got their first commit of 2026 in Mason Williams. And then we'll talk about his dad because he also got hired at Kentucky as an assistant coach. I think these are 2 great moves for Kentucky. I really do. Mason Williams is a guy you're not expecting him to come in here and be your point guard 1. They're obviously going to recruit a bigger name point guard to be their point guard 1 because Jalen Lowe entered the portal. Best of wishes to him, but I think that was for the best. But Mason Williams is a great point guard 2. I mean, maybe even a point guard 3 in this first year, really depending on how they're feeling. He's a long-term guy. He shows a ton of flashes on the offensive side of the ball, ton of shot creation, which Kentucky needs. And then on his dad, what is your thoughts before we move over to his dad, Ryan? What were your kind of thoughts on the commitment of Mason Williams here to Kentucky?
I think he's a perfect candidate because part of what we've always wanted is not just, yes, you do need some flashy guards and it would be great to get Tyron Stokes or somebody like that. I know that's a later comment, but getting somebody like this as a commit who is going to be a multi-year project guy, kind of same as Braden Hawthorne last year, but honestly, probably even a little bit more talent and more ready to go than Braden Hawthorne was last year. So I think it's a great fit. He has shown that he can win. I mean, he's a 4-star recruit. He helped upset the number one high school team in the country with his high school team. So he can win big games. He can score. He can make plays. He can make the pass and stuff as needed. So I think he's a great fit.
I completely agree. And then moving on, his dad, Mo Williams, NBA champion, a long time kind of sixth man of the year kind of candidate in the NBA, just an unbelievable player who was the head coach at Jackson State, where Mason Williams was originally committed. He left Jackson State and is now joining the Kentucky staff as an assistant coach. I'm absolutely blown away. I think this is a fantastic hire. I think this kind of really fits the need of what Kentucky needed as an assistant coach. Obviously, they lost Alvin Brooks and Jason Hart. Those two guys are moving on. But I think Mo Williams was the perfect hire. I mean, he brings in the Nike ties. He was a Nike athlete for his whole 17-year career. He still is a Nike guy, which is a big part of the Tyron Stokes saga, which we're going to get to right after this. He brings a lot of knowledge on the recruiting trail and just connections just because of who he is. And I think those two reasons right there are big. And the third one also is him being an NBA point guard and him being able to bring in that kind of thing, those coaching to the point guard position at Kentucky, which we really need. And so I think he checks all the boxes. And I hated the people saying, "Oh my gosh, look at his head coaching resume or his record when he was at Jackson State." He's not here to be the head coach. He's here to recruit. He's here to coach the point guards and also just kind of build up all the connections and everything around Kentucky. So, Ryan, what were your thoughts on the hire of Mo Williams?
I absolutely love it. I love the hire here because I think, like you said, number one, it brings a street cred. The guy had a 17-year NBA career, multi-time All-Star, NBA champion, played with LeBron, was multiple times up for sixth man of the year in the NBA. So, like, do I think, yes, the current Kentucky coaching staff knows what they're doing? Absolutely. But you don't have that big name guy that is like the come here, come to Kentucky because this guy's going to be able to coach you. And I think Mo Williams brings that ability and brings that kind of aura around his name of, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. And I completely agree. Who cares what his record at Jackson State was? He's not, like you said, not coming to be the head coach. It doesn't really matter, to be completely honest, what his record was.
No.
All that matters is that he can coach and that he knows what he's doing with point guards. And that's what we need because Pope and Mikhail McLean and stuff are all big men coaches and played the big man position. So they aren't point guard coaches.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it was a great hire just because obviously wish Alvin Brooks and Jason Hart the best at their new positions. Jason Hart's at SMU, Alvin Brooks isn't anywhere yet, but those guys were brought in to be the recruiters. That was what they were known for. And we hadn't been able to seal the deal on any recruits in this 2026 class. So until Mason Williams, and obviously he's not the cream of the crop type of guy we were looking for, but he's a good piece. That's kind of building into our next point here because as Kentucky is still looking for one more assistant coach, since they have one more spot open, I would obviously assume that would be filled before the start of the transfer portal. I really hope it is. So they basically have 6 days to fill this assistant coach spot. I've heard Kevin Keats, the old NC State head coach, his name floated around there a bunch. Austin Pope, who was a grad assistant on the team last year and now works with the Lakers. I've seen a lot of names floated around. I'll be very interested to see who this next assistant coach hire is. But with that being said, we're going to kind of focus on
I've also
over here.
seen one other big name guy.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The other big rumor, Jamal Crawford.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think there's been rumors of that, but it would be tough. He's got his son's still in high school at that Seattle team. Don't be wrong. Don't let me be wrong. I would be happy with as hell getting him, but he's also got a pretty gushy job set up in NBA TV. So I think he's with Prime Video, I think. So it would be tough, but yeah, I've seen his name thrown out there a bunch, but it'll be interesting. But, on the Jamal Crawford kind of topic here, who he is an assistant coach for is Tyron Stokes' team. And that is kind of the big topic here of Kentucky basketball world is Tyron Stokes. Waiting on him to make a decision here because that will be, you know, the really big piece that Kentucky needs for this next year's team's roster. So obviously it's between Kentucky and Kansas. A lot of people view Kansas as the favorite. They have viewed Kansas as the favorite for a while. But the big thing all Kentucky fans are saying now is like, if he's such a Kansas lock, then why hasn't he committed yet? What's taking him so long? What's he waiting on? And I think that's Kentucky kind of making their final push here. The hiring of Mo Williams is definitely a big one. He's a big Nike guy, like we said. He has the NBA presence. All these things definitely kind of, you know, entice Tyron Stokes a little bit more. So I'm really hoping he has
And
the
the Bill
decision
Self potentially.
retiring. Yep.
Bill Self talking about he's not sure he's going to come back with all the health stuff. So plays a part too.
Yeah, it sure will be interesting. Obviously, I hope he makes his decision, you know, either before the transfer portal starts would be great, or right around when it starts, because it would really suck if, you know, we're sitting around waiting for him to decide and we miss out on some other guys. So I hopefully he just kind of, you know, comes out, and this has been a very drawn out recruitment. I think everybody knows that, but I also feel like Kansas and Kentucky both will be like, hey, we kind of need a decision here eventually, just because, you know, we got to be able to build out the rest of our team and know if we're getting you or not. But this has been a recruitment that nobody really knows. All the crystal balls of late on all the recruitment sites have said Kansas and Kansas this and Kansas that. But the optimism in my head here kind of tells me that if he was such a Kansas lock, then why hasn't he committed already? And Kansas has a ton of good freshmen coming in. So who knows if the NIL package is as good as Kentucky's. They're an Adidas school. Kentucky's a Nike school. There's so much going on. Obviously, I don't really know any of the insider stuff on it besides, you know, kind of the outside layer. So we're just kind of going to roll with that. We're going to see what happens and see if Kentucky is able to pull it off and get the number one player in this high school recruiting class. But focusing on the transfer portal, obviously Kentucky has already had Jalen Lowe enter the transfer portal. I would fully expect at least a couple more guys would enter the portal here over the next week before it opens. I think a lot of them are doing their meetings and stuff during this week. So, Ryan, if you had to pick, though, obviously Braden Hawthorne's coming back. Then obviously I think some of the other big names of Colin Chandler, Malachi Moreno, Cam Williams, Andrea Yelovich, Mo Diabate. We'll say those five right there of Colin Chandler, Malachi, Cam, Mo, and Yelovich. I think those are the main five that Kentucky, if they're going to bring back, I think it comes out of that group. I think Jasper Johnson leaves. I think Brandon Garrison leaves. I just don't see them being pieces coming back. If you had to pick, you know, three of the five, because realistically, I don't think there's a way we get all five of those guys back. If we do, then that'll honestly shock me. But if you had to pick three of those five, Ryan, which is the three you are picking?
I think number one is Malachi Moreno. I think the flashes that he showed, the skill that he had for a freshman 7-footer, being from Kentucky too, I think makes him your priority number one to bring back. Number two, kind of, I think the one that for sure leaves is Mo Diabate. I think I'll say that right off the bat. I just don't think he fits overall in Mark Pope's system. I think he was brought in just to kind of assuage some of the, oh, we didn't have the physicality last year piece. And so he was a perfect kind of role player to fill that. But I just think that he ends up leaving. Colin Chandler, I think it's going to be tough with BYU, kind of threatening with his wife, having some business stuff back there. Would I love to have him back? Yes, because I think he's made huge leaps from year one to year two and could continue to do that year three. Cam Williams, I think his season was really just, we didn't get to see the full Cam Williams because for the beginning of the season, he was trying to get acclimated to playing at a higher level and then got hurt and then kind of came back for the tournament. Honestly, I would love to have him back. I think would be my second choice because he's got the length, he's got the athleticism. We know that he can shoot. We just didn't really get to see it much this year. And then, so I think it really comes down to either Colin or Andrea Yelovich. And I think that Yelovich fits Mark Pope's system well. And I think bringing him back would be a good one just because it's easier to find guards in the transfer portal. Let's be completely honest. And you bring size and shooting ability, and he's got the passing ability. And I think he takes a leap from year one to year two in Kentucky's system with Kentucky's strength training. he didn't get to Lexington until very late last summer, so didn't really get a full off season or anything with Kentucky. So those would be my three. Would be Cam, Malachi, and Andrea. I don't know what you agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree on the Malachi State. I think that is the most obvious one. Obviously, I also feel like him and Colin are the biggest threats to leave just because if we get outbid by another school, obviously would love to have Malachi back. I think he's a great piece. Obviously, we need to get Malachi back, and then I think we need to get another high level rated center to just kind of push them both. But obviously, I really love Cam Williams. I don't think he should be plan on him being our starting small forward by any means. I think if you can go get a Dink Pate out of the G League, or if you can go get a Tyron Stokes, I think both of those two guys should be starters over him. But those two for sure. But my third is I love Colin Chandler. I think he fits exactly what the Mark Pope offense needs. And you need the athleticism. You need the 3-point shooting. His defense got a ton better. He posted an Instagram story today of him working out with Kentucky pants on, and obviously on X, all the Kentucky fans are like, "Oh, why would he be working out in Kentucky stuff and all this?" And obviously, there's the call to go back home to go to BYU. But if that was the case, then he probably would have just stayed committed to BYU right out of high school, right after his mission, even though Mark Pope left. But Mark Pope said, "No, I want you to come to Kentucky with me." It's just tough for me to see how close him and Mark Pope are, just how close they're with Colin and his wife, how close they are to the Pope family. It's just tough to see him leave when he has no real connection at BYU since none of the coaching staff was there when he was recruited under Mark Pope. I just don't see him leaving. I really don't. It's tough for me to see, and I think he would be great. And he's the type of guy where he will be able to swallow the pill and be like, you know what? Richie Saunders 2 years ago at BYU, he came off the bench and he had his best season of his college career. He was a sixth man and he was absolutely lethal. And I think that's Colin Chandler's role. I think he's that sixth or seventh guy off the bench, and he's perfect at it. I think they go get two better guards that'll start over him, but he's the first guy off the bench. And Andrea, I would like him back, but I just think, especially with the enters into the portal so far, I just think there's a chance for us to upgrade that position. If he wants to come back and he's fully okay with being the backup, then so be it. I mean, that's completely fine with me. But I just don't think I saw enough of him, and he had the opportunities to start and everything like that kind of warrant, being the guy to bring back to be your starter, which I was listening to Jack Pilgrim talk on the KSR show, and he was very open in saying that Kentucky's going to recruit how they kind of built that first year's team, where they kind of got 2 or 3 stars and then kind of built the team around them. I mean, you think of that year's team, you had Lamont Butler, you had Jackson Robinson, and you had Amari Williams. Those were kind of the big 3 guys on that team. And then you had Kobe Brea coming off the bench who fit his role perfectly. You had Andrew Carr. You had Otega Owe. You had all these guys that just formed a perfect team. And I think that's why the hiring of Keegan Brown to kind of handle the roster construction is perfect. Because this is Kentucky now, not like this last year where they're going to go out and spend the $20 million and just try and get the best players possible, which in retrospect, I feel like they paid for a bunch of 6-mans. But I think what they do is they go out and they get 2 or 3 big guys. If Tyron Stokes is that guy, if they can get Tyron Stokes and Dink Pate, holy crap, will I be ecstatic? But then they just build the team around those guys. I mean, I don't know how you think about that, Ryan, but I think it's kind of following the build of you look at these teams that are good this year in the Michigans where they have Yaxel Lindenborg and they have 1 or 2 other guys and then they build the team around those 3 guys. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this stems from the one hire that we didn't really talk about, which is Keegan Brown as your director of roster management, player development type of role, because that's what he's been doing. Keegan Brown did that at BYU, has been with the Milwaukee Bucks G League team as their kind of video coordinator, scouting coordinator there. So I do think that this team is constructed differently and going big game hunting for 2 or 3 big name guys. Go get your stars, preferably one of them being a point guard, and then probably a 2 or 3 guard or one of each. Go get your big name guys that way, and then fill the rest of the team based on analytics with guys that are going to fit your system. Kind of like what Pope did for the first year, where it wasn't all just paying top dollar and outbidding every team for every player that's in the top, 30 of the transfer portal rankings, but instead he got the guys that fit the system no matter where they were ranked. And I think that's kind of what they're going to do this year is go get your couple good guys, your superstars, and then fill the rest of the team as you need to with not using as much NIL. You don't need to be a $30 million roster, but fill it with the right guys and pay them the right amount of money relative to where they're coming from and kind of the position that they play.
Yeah, I completely agree. And KSR put out a post today of kind of guys who Kentucky's going to be looking at. And, Miles Bird from San Diego State, who kind of fits the Lamont. He's not a Lamont Butler point guard, but he's kind of that guard who would be perfect for Kentucky. Really big, 3-and-D guy who also has sneaky athleticism. He was Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year this last year. I think he would be an unbelievable get for Kentucky. Tyrone Riley out of San Francisco, who Kentucky was in on last year, really reminds me he's an unbelievable shooter. Reminds me a lot of kind of that Jackson Robinson build, just the shot creation, the ability to just get his own shot, get open without the ball, without needing a pass. And then obviously you kind of, I'm blanking on his first name, but Decker, Liberty, who's he's from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. He was, I think, second in the entire NCAA in 3-point shooting. And, there's just multiple guys out there that, Kentucky is going to target. And obviously, all these X posts and everything I look at, they could be completely off because I think this Kentucky team this year, they're not going to make a ton of things as public as they did last offseason. They're going to keep very in-house. They're going to work. They're going to build this team how they want it to be built. And I'm really excited. I think there will be a ton of great pieces. I think the transfer portal will be great. I think Kentucky makes a couple big splashes. I'm really crossing my fingers for Tyron Stokes because, that's a guy, man. You build the right team around him. He can take you a long way. I really do. If you think back to a
Him or
couple
Dink Pate, I think both.
yeah. And I think if you have the ability to get both of them, I say screw it, throw the bag at them and get the both of them because they don't play the same position. Dink Pate's a guard, Tyron Stokes is a forward. So it's not like they're going to be like, oh, if you get this guy, I'm not coming here because you're going to have this other guy. No, shit, both of you can come. Let's bring it all for it. And nobody get mad at us about the Dink Pate stuff if that does happen because he went to the G League straight out of high school. He's never played a single minute in the NBA. I think this is like one of those circumstances where if the NCAA is going to allow some of these other guys to come back and play and have no issues, this guy's never played a single minute in college, and he's never played a single minute in the NBA before. This is the perfect opportunity. This is no different than the guys playing in Europe that play in the professional leags over there and come to college.
It's
It's
it's the
realistically the
same
same
as
thing.
The Baylor guy that did get eligibility.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Who came right out of the G League, never played college, and never played in the NBA. So there should be no concerns there. But with that being said, it's tough to kind of really pre-fire a lot here because there's just everything, all the information out there is all these insiders, and who knows if they're actually true or not. They could just be making shit up. So we don't want to spew that too much of that stuff at you guys. This was just those names I kind of talked about were kind of commonly known names that everybody kind of knows Kentucky's going to be looking at just simply because they had looked at them before and they really fit the build of what Kentucky needs. So, Ryan, you got anything left to say here on this episode?
I'm excited. I'm hopeful. I'm crossing my fingers that we're able to retain kind of the key core pieces that we're looking for, and then wishing for good luck here with Kentucky, with the new staff, with the new additions to go get and build a better roster for this next year.
Yeah, I completely agree. It should be good. Expect a lot of news coming out of the Kentucky basketball world over this next week, with guys entering the portal, with hopefully the assistant coach spot being filled. Just a ton of news. Hopefully Tyron Stokes news within this next week as well. And then the transfer portal opens up the day after the national championship. So it should be good. With that being said, we will have obviously the MLB Diamond Report podcast will be getting posted and it'll be up before this one. Then we have this one. The next week, we have our first Focus Golf Masters Edition podcast with me and Ryan and our two new co-hosts, Chase and Albert. We're really looking forward to that podcast, and we'll have a cage talk next week. So that is the schedule for next week. Yeah, go check out the website, allsportsfocusnetwork.com. Get your Focus Golf merch. Springtime is coming out here soon. You'll be seeing some golf YouTube videos as we will be working to start creating those. So we're really excited to get those out to you guys. Ryan, any last, final words here?
Go Cats. Go check out the merch site. Go Focus Golf.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to do it for this week's podcast. We hope you guys enjoy listening, and thanks as always. And we will see you guys on the next one.